On this episode,
actually feared for his life, right? He wasn't just afraid of financial...
I don't think, based on what we've seen, and I'm not talking on the news, I'm talking about in our own social feed. I think the breakdown is on the way there.
If I field stripped it, maybe. Right. If I field stripped the thing and I just literally, I've got the butt of the gun here and I've got... That's just me grappling with what I'm seeing versus what I know to be my own reality. And I know that I can do it with what I own. So I do find that a little odd.
Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Dive into these histories, cocktails and conspiracies. Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Uncover those anomalies, cocktails and conspiracies.
Tired of dragging around that clunky old grill to every tailgate or campsite? Hitchfire has your back. Literally. Their rugged hitch-mounted grills are built for adventure. Just swing it out, fire it up, and get cooking anywhere your vehicle takes you. And I've got a code to hook you up. Use SFXDOTCOM at checkout to save 10% off your entire order. Head to hitchfire.com and upgrade your outdoor game. Hitchfire, built to burn wherever you roam. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we step into a world where the most dangerous weapon isn't a bullet. It's an idea. Charlie Kirk, love him or hate him, has long said the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. His voice has sparked millions to think differently, to question authority, to challenge the narratives we're told to blindly accept. He once reminded us, facts don't care about your feelings, yet facts themselves can be twisted, buried, and erased. But what happens when a voice like his grows too powerful? When dissent can no longer be ignored? History tells us that silencing has many faces: censorship, exile, and sometimes even worse. We're told one version of a story, a neat explanation for the record books. But what if the story isn't the whole truth? What if what we're witnessing is not just a controversy, but a conspiracy? Tonight, we peel back the curtain and ask the question they don't want asked. Is there more to the tale of Charlie Kirk than we've been led to believe? Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, whether you are tuning in across the nation or around the world. My name is Shane Skwarek, here with my... Well, I don't really have a good catchphrase for you tonight, Mr. Phillips, but here with my co-host, Mr. Phillips, in another somber episode as your conspiracy realists. Cheers and welcome back. I'm gonna take a sip.
Saved my eardrums. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I didn't think it was apropos to come off fire on all cylinders, because this is the second time in, I guess, really the last 2 months, in so many months, that we're doing an episode where there's an unfortunate passing of a very well-liked, very notable person, ironically, both from the conservative side as well. But there's some question marks that are around it, Mr. Phillips.
Well, that there are, my friend. And we had question marks from day one, and amongst our group, our close friends. We've had a lot of discussion about them. We've had a little bit of time between now and then, but I think we probably still have more questions than answers at this point.
Debatable, and I think that's what we're really going to get into tonight. I've come of the ilk, and I'm actually glad we had not jumped on this right away, because
I agree.
Anytime there's a happening in the news, there's so much information that gets kind of poured out there and filled out, and I don't know. the narrative kind of gets lost. And in this case, in Charlie Kirk, I mean, the initial question right at the gate is why, what happened, so on and so forth. And everyone starts speculating. And when you and I talked about, it was obvious what our next recording was going to be. When we talked about that, there was a completely different name that was being floated around. I don't even know if I still have that name here. It's Sky something. Yes, Sky Valadez.
Yes. The guy that had made some social media posts. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of similar facial structures as some of the images that went up there. I'm not going to pull up those pictures out of respect for that person. I'm sure their life became a quick hell because the internet jumps on things and they go absolutely nuts. So unfortunate for that person. Listen, you said maybe you got involved with some wrong things. You said some wrong things. It's not really an excuse for why you have to kind of get your life turned upside down. But nevertheless, I'm glad we waited because more of the story came out. And for me, I've been pretty accepting of the story and the narrative to this point. And I know that's not the case. It's not always the case, especially in conspiracy circles here. But you're not necessarily so accepting of that. You tend to believe there's a little bit more to the story.
Well, yes and no, and it's difficult, right? And especially being in our shoes, right? Because we talk about conspiracies constantly. This is something that we do, albeit for fun, but it's a major point in our life, and you could easily find yourself going down the rabbit hole where everything is a conspiracy, and that's not always the case. Having said that, I don't know if I'd say more oftentimes than not, but often there is more to the story, and there are some three-letter agencies within our own government that don't seem to be very forthcoming with information right now, and whenever things like that occur, it just kind of raises a bit of a red flag. And I'm not going to sit here and claim that I have a specific theory on what did or didn't occur. I just have questions,
Okay. What would the first question be if you could sit down with somebody that was know all knowledge and was going to give you a clear answer? Where does that question begin for you?
I guess I'd have to take it back to who and why. Now, I think there's some interesting information out there about the why, which then kind of implicates a who, if you will. But if I were able to talk to an all-seeing eye, I'd want to know who and why. And I look, I know that sounds stupid because that's what everybody wants to know, right? I'm sure you'd want to know the same things, who and why. But yeah, I mean, that would certainly be my first few questions there.
The who, I mean, I think we've hammered that down, ended up being Tyler Robinson. There's stories and reports now coming out that he had this rabid obsession, I think is one of the titles of the New York Post, with Charlie Kirk. Not on the good side, not as a fan, but as an opponent. And it's been really telling to me and really honestly troubling to see a lot of the commentary that's been put out since Charlie's passing. People are showing their true colors, which is unfortunate, and really crapping on the guy. And we're seeing a lot of, all the isms and stuff that are coming out that are being tied to him. And it's funny because I've continuously posted on my own social channels. If anybody can find me one single clip of him being derogatory in any particular way to a segment of people, I'll cower back. I'll admit it. I'll reshare it. I was even so much. I was going to be so bold as to say I'll give you write $1,000 check to that person. Because I'm that confident in that. And I've watched a lot of Charlie Kirk clips, especially before his passing, but afterwards as well. I think it's interesting because there was one clip that came up, and it was so apropos for the situation where one guy was like, "Oh, I know you're." I don't know if he was calling him racist or give him this, right? Yeah, I know you're this. And Charlie's, why? Explain to me why I am this. I'm pretty sure it was racist. And he went on, he's like, well, because you are. And he's like, well, you can't give me any evidence. You can't give me any backstory. You can't tell me anything. And I have this company called Blexit, and I employ, 40 Black Americans down in Atlanta and all these, named off a couple other cities, but like basically going into Black communities and empowering them and fixing them and cleaning them up because I shouldn't have said that. I'll have to bleep that one, Mauricio, because that's gonna get us a flag here again. Because another affiliation is not doing that in those particular towns, and I see him do that a lot, right? And a lot of it, somebody would come up to the podium that definitely doesn't fit the mold of who his supporter would be, and he's like, stop booing. Everybody, let's show respect to this particular person. And that has ran the gamut. That has been from, it was a gay kid that walked up there. He's like, I'm not opposed to you at all. He's like, in fact, there was a very hardcore, like more like right extremist guy that was up there. It was like, you can't be Christian and accept gay marriage. And Charlie's like, well, I think marriage is between a man and a woman, but I don't really care. Like, that's my belief. I don't care if you have a different belief. That's up to you. And I'm very accepting of that. And if you can't be accepting of that, then you're not part of the conservative movement. And it was like, there were so many stories and clips and pieces of evidence of him actually combating people that were way more extreme and saying, like, don't tie us in to your bubble. And that's not right. And defending the very people who would then get on a microphone and try to lambaste him. Most of the time they just sort of backed off and were just like, oh, okay, wow, like this is different. But sometimes you had the people that just didn't want to hear that. And they just keep perpetuating a point and hammering it home. And then they do the stock get loud. And there's a great one, you probably saw it, of a little old guy. He's like, I came here to fight you. God told me that I have to come here and fist fight you right now. And he's like, I'm just not going to do that. So, I'm out. But it's funny because, like, you see these people that they get this notion in their brain, and I'm seeing it now, whether it's in people that we are directly connected to, which there's few left that are jerk offs like that, in my impression, because I've gotten rid of them over the past couple of years. I don't need to be associated to you at this point. But there's few left in that vein, but still, like, an arm's length away, that I still see them posting this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, how could you be so obsessed with hatred for a person that you've never even met, that you've never spoken to, and who you've clearly never watched 1 second of a clip for? And so when you ask about the why, and you look at some of those headlines for Tyler Robinson and this rabid obsession, which I think is such a great phrase. So whoever the author was of that article, I mean, when you nailed that title so well, because I think that's what it's become. And it's not just Charlie Kirk. We've seen that happen with other people. Of course, we can't say them because we'll get the I don't even know if I can say the interference tag on that one as well.
We're gonna get dinged. We're gonna get dinged
1,000 times. We know this is gonna have like 6 views because we're gonna get, yeah. Well, that I can mute out. But I think there's so many instances of that where you see this like rabid obsession, and it's like I can't wrap my head around it. Why you'd be so angry at somebody, but there are people that are, and when you mix that with somebody that's very much unstable, and then they have access to a firearm, or in some cases not even that, they'll find the access to it, they'll find another way towards it. That's what creates this nasty mix. So that's really my who and why. I don't think, based on what we've seen, and I'm not talking on the news, I'm talking about in our own social feeds, and maybe you can agree with this, maybe you think I'm crazy for this, but I mean, look at what some of the people say in Facebook threads and communities. You mean to tell me that you don't think some of those people could be capable of this if given the opportunity?
Yeah. Dude, look, you're not wrong on that, and the problem is that these people live in an echo chamber, right? And I know that's like and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that.
It's a
right? Like,
buzzword, yeah.
It's true. It's a buzzword,
100%.
right? They live in an echo chamber, right? Like, their X feed is the polar opposite of mine or yours, and probably way more off the deep on, because they're on extreme levels, right? And so they're just inundated, and they're just reconfirming a thought that they had, or something that they heard that they agreed with them, that they clicked with, and then they just continue to reaffirm it with more people saying the same and or similar things, right? And they refuse to look outside of that. In fact, actually, you just mentioned you'd kind of gotten rid of a lot of people. And I know because I've known you for 20 years, I know the people that you're talking about and the types of people. When you say you've gotten rid of them off of your social feeds and things of that nature, we're talking about dumb people. Dumb people who don't bother to do any research and just spout off because they watched 20 seconds of a podcast clip, right? Like, we're talking about stupid people here. And so, yeah, get rid of the stupid people. What I found myself doing, actually, right after Charlie was nixed, there were people that I followed and not just regular people, I'm talking about public figures, if you will, that had different messages. And I almost went to say, this person, I'm unfollowing them, because they are people that regularly, just in my opinion, have terrible takes on things in the geopolitical sphere. But I did stop myself because I said, you know what? It's good just to have that other side poking through to see what they're saying, to read the beat on that other avenue, and also like, hey man, like I should just continue to be exposed to that because maybe I learned something, maybe I don't. I don't think that I'm going to. I think a lot of them are idiots. But I still think it's a good idea to be challenged with information from the other side with difference of opinions. And so I actually decided not to remove a few people. Not that makes me a good person, but that's kind of why I did it.
I would commend you for that. You know, I have a fine line, right? And if you can have discourse and not crap on people, there's people that said some things that I wasn't in favor of in the way it was sort of like a backhanded compliment type thing, you know, that like where you're kind of a snarky asshole, but you say something nice anyway. There's people that said stuff like that, and I kind of left that alone. A lot of the people that I had removed in previous issues were not all. Some of them were people that I did have a modicum of respect for at some point. And even this time through, that list has dwindled down quite a bit. If anybody is saying anything that I'm deeming ignorant, arrogant, or completely ill-informed, I'm not bothering with exercising my energy on them. I'm not bothering with giving them a follow. I don't want to hear their opinion anymore. And it's not because I don't want to hear what the other side has to say. I don't want to create an echo chamber myself. Certainly not. But if I'm going to hear the other side, I need to have it be a comprehensible argument, right? Like,
I agree.
A lot of these people are just spewing talking points that they're getting off of CNN, right? And they rattle the list. And when you challenge it, all of a sudden you're this, you're that, the name call, and you get the Wolverines that come in after you. And that I'm not having. I think anybody that knows me knows that I have no problem going to war in Facebook comments. Like, oh, hell no. Like, I will be the last word. I don't care if we talk for the next 48 hours straight. I will get the last word. You can mark my words on that every single time. And I will be right. And I will make sure that I'm backing that up with facts. And a lot of people don't like it when I say that. I don't care. Maybe I'm being the arrogant and cocky one here. That's fine. Even if I'm dead wrong, I promise you in that argument, I will end right. You will quit before I will.
You know that.
That's not healthy, I don't think. Probably not. And it's not the way I really want to spend my time. And I've learned that there are people that want to talk, and then there are people that just want you to listen. And those people that want you to listen, I don't have the patience for. I'm not interested in hearing what you have to say. Because if you can't have that discussion, much like what Charlie was perpetuating the entire time, we have to have a discussion. There has to be the ability to have discourse. If that ability doesn't exist, I've just found it to be more productive to just say, you know what, the hell with it, and move on. So, little digression there, pulling us back to kind of the main storyline. The entire internet, and certainly our small little group chats that we have on there. Maybe one day we'll open up like a Discord too, and have, not that that's a probably bad topic right now, but everyone else seems to be doing these things. We'll open up our own little private community where maybe our followers can kind of jump in and communicate here too. Yeah. One of the big pieces that came up right out of the gate, it's the assumption that it's got to be a hitman, right? You see something that's so public and so gruesome that it's got to be very much planned out. It's got to be intentional. It's got to be there to create the most amount of carnage. And that was the first thing that comes to my mind as well too. I'm not, the one calling
we had
the
a very
kettle
lengthy
black
conversation about that.
Mm-hmm. After I gave it some thought, though, and started looking at a lot of the imagery that came out, and I'm sure I can pull something up as I go through this, that idea really changed in my mind quite a bit. I no longer thought that was the case because, I mean, the estimates were about a 200-yard shot. And then the talks about the gun came out, and there's been some back and forth on that. For the sake of discussion, I'm going to say Car 98 because it's what's in PUBG. I know it's not exactly that, but it was a similar type of weapon. It was a 30-06. And it did some research there. Yeah. So, I didn't think that was that outrageous after I thought about it for somebody to sit up there and hit a lucky shot. And my argument was really that if you assumed that the shot was meant to hit Charlie right in the neck and did, of course, yeah, that takes expert precision. And the window for hitting that is very small, right? When you factor in all the other things. But if you assume that this is now the target, and listen, there's a lot more meat on me than was on Charlie there. So maybe I'm a bigger target than he was. But like, this is a lot bigger of a target for you to focus on. And at 200 yards with the right scope, it just didn't seem that off to me. It seemed unlikely, but somebody that would have had some novice experience at a range. I kept using the word marksman, but that's probably an inappropriate word because that infers there's a lot more skill, which maybe in this case there was. But at this time we don't know who did any of this. I felt like that was plausible. And then we later find out that it's 143 yards, which makes it a little bit easier to give you some credit because you were pretty opposed to that 200-yard thought initially.
I was full
wildly opposed, if I may asterisk.
Yeah, full steam ahead as I'm trying to fix myself in my seat here on the idea that a normal citizen could not have taken that shot. And look, I still stand by the fact that it's an incredibly difficult shot. Now, granted, to your point, and we had not only just the two of us, but our friend group there had a very lengthy discussion, one of which is in the military and backed me up at first until he found some other information. Point being, it's still difficult to do. I mean, that's not an easy shot. I shoot. I know you shoot sometimes, not all the time, right? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even say that I'm a recreational shooter at this point. It's probably been a few years, but I do own firearms. I do shoot them. I have shot them at distance. It's not, and I do fancy myself to be a decent shot. I'm fairly good. And even at 100 yards, it's not easy, right? It's not an easy thing to do. It is certainly difficult, and then when you factor in the fact that you're about to take someone's life, and all the external factors that come into play, it's a tough thing to do, man. And I don't mean like a tough thing to do in terms of like, from a mental perspective. Physically, it's a difficult thing to do.
Well, I think the mental perspective has to weigh in you at some point. But I mean, maybe you're just overwhelmed with such rage that doesn't become a factor, right? And it doesn't become a factor until after. I don't know. I've never been in that situation. I don't think I'll personally ever be in that situation. At least I certainly hope that that's the case, that we're never put in a situation where we have to be in that situation. But yeah, I mean, I think the crutch of the conspiracy really lies on that shot. And I think if it hit anywhere else and Charlie was able to pull through, I think people would have generally been pretty accepting that it is Tyler Robinson, right? I think the fact that it hit in such a nasty spot that caused probably the most amount of visual damage, and by that I mean just like the spattering and like the contortions. Right. Yeah, like I think that is what really... It's awful. It's the worst, one of the worst possible I've thing
ever seen in my life.
See.
Ever.
I'm gonna backtrack to this, what you just said there, because there's something that I was talking about earlier that I thought is really relevant to what you just said. But just I think because of that is where this conspiracy kind of clouds on top of that. I still think it's a lucky shot, right? Even for somebody that's pretty well trained. Utah, that's very big in hunting. They get weapons when they're very young. They get trained on them. So it's somebody that's been involved in this their entire life. Conservative parents, it's been ingrained in them. So I don't think the shot was as difficult for him as we might think, because he's probably a lot more active. But nevertheless, given the whole scenario, it is still a difficult one. He just happened to hit it, right? Just as many as all those other attempts that have happened on the sitting politician that currently leads the country right now, and all of those allies were misses. This one was not. And so that's why we harp on it. So what you just said, though, I don't remember where the conversation was happening. There's been so many of them in the last week, but I did have somebody say to the effect of, it's probably the most gruesome thing, just given the scope of it all, because this was being live streamed. it was being broadcast from multiple devices all over the crowd. From obviously, Turning Point was doing something themselves, the university itself. There was a huge audience there, and it wasn't a clean hit. Right? Normally, these types of things are clean. You look at like the JFK thing for a little bit. The first hit was clean. He kind of just hunched over. Nobody really knew what was happening. But even that wasn't something where you saw in 4K as it happened. And it was interesting because I remember when it happened, all you had to do was open up a social media app, and it was everywhere. And it was such a definitive moment, such a turning point, which has been kind of used a lot. I think because of that, because it was so gruesome and out there and in front of everyone's faces, I think that changes a lot of people's perspective. It changes the way most people would have normally felt about a situation like this to happen. What do you think about that?
Dude, 100%. I mean, look, I'm not offended by really much of anything, right? Like, I don't think things don't offend me. I have a pretty good stomach for gore for the most part. Like, things don't usually bother me. And when I saw the very first video, it was not the zoomed in version, right? It was the very first videos that came out were from a distance, and it actually looked like, from my perspective anyway, he had gotten hit in the right shoulder, right? Or some, maybe somewhere in the chest on the right side of his body. This all happened as I'm like leaving to go do school pickup, so I'm sitting, waiting to pick my girls up, and I open up my phone, and to your point, the first thing that pops up now is the zoomed in version, right? Where you could just see everything, right? You see the blood. I mean, immediately there's a 99% chance he's not making it, right? And I say all that because I'm being dead ass serious. I legitimately gasped, right? I'm sitting alone in my car, and I had a visceral reaction, and I actually made an audible noise by myself, right? Like, it was just natural. And I was just so taken back. And I wasn't like this huge supporter of Charlie Kirk, but I was a fan of Charlie Kirk's. I watched a lot of his content. And granted, I probably would have had that reaction had it just been some random person. You know what I mean? It didn't even necessarily have to be him. It was just such a graphic video that I was just so taken back by. But you're right. And then it might have been that night that we were having that conversation, and that's really where the thought for me, right, when we were having the conversation about, hey, that's a really tough shot, that's where the idea of, hey, maybe there's something more at play here than what we currently are being fed. And that's what kind of started it for me. And I'm probably a lot closer, and I know we've talked a lot about this offline. I'm actually a lot closer to where you currently sit on this, as it probably being the case. But there certainly is information out there that there's no proof. But there's reasons. There's certainly some good reasons that we should think about as to why someone else, or possibly even another nation, could be involved.
Well, let's get into that a little bit, because that is really, I guess, the crutch of Cocktails and Conspiracies here. Conspiracy realists at the heart of it all, right? So we're going to try to look at this as objectively as possible here. There's been a lot that continues to come out. Again, we're not going to, I don't think, touch too much on some of the conspiracies that happened really early on in the process. I think for the most part, a lot of those were dispelled once Tyler's identity was kind of written out there. There's some talk too about he posted on Discord, he didn't post on Discord, Discord's not sharing any information on there. I think that's all just kind of nonsense stuff that we're not really going to have to concern ourselves with. Anybody that uses Discord actively knows how those servers can be. It's a text messaging app, for those not familiar with it, if you need it to be that, but it's also shared groups. And I'm sure that any groups that he may have been a part of, that people were aware once this happened, wanted to protect themselves, and they probably wiped that clean if they were ever saying anything nasty, or shut down their little Discord server. So I don't totally blame some of those kids too. Sometimes you say some hateful rhetoric online that you maybe you mean, maybe you don't, but you say it because you're behind the computer screen. And when things get actually serious, I don't blame people for wanting to correct their asses a little bit there. One of the big ones was the building, and coming off the building and nobody really seeing a gun. You remember that one?
Dude, I literally just brought it up to you before we started. Yeah, like, I have a tough time seeing a weapon being transported with him as he comes down off of that building.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up a quick screen share here. This is going to be a crap video. It's off of X, but it's the best I can do for here for right now. We're logged in here at Conspiracy on X if you want to follow us on there. But here we go. Here's the video. I'm just going to slow it down a little. Oh, I just zoomed it in. So let me get rid of that. I'm going to just slow this down a little bit, this playback, so we can see this here. I'm going to mute it. We don't really need it. All right. So right there, right out of the gate. Let's come up. I don't know why this video is starting like halfway through the middle of it. Speed it up a little bit again here. There we go.
It's yeah, because it kind of shows you the main thing and then rolls back.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go.
Editing technique.
Do you see this right here? Can you see my cursor?
I do. Yeah, I can see it.
Do you see that? So keep an eye right in that little area. I'm going to slow this back down again because I think whatever they edited this, they wanted you to see the jump off first.
Yeah.
Okay, look right there. Now that does not look like his leg. Now it's an artifact from the video too, but you can kind of clearly see that there's something there in his hand. And then watch him turn around and look. He's got something hanging down here that he's about to place down.
Yeah.
See how he places it down?
It actually does
that
look like a
I
towel.
think is the weapon. Well,
it does look like a towel draped over it.
Draped over it. So he allegedly came in there with extra clothes, right? And so is it out of the realm of possibility to say he didn't throw that on top of there to cover it up a little bit so that when people saw him, it's not blatantly obvious, right? Now you see him drop it right there, and then you see him go to jump down.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not just jumping down; he's slowing down. I don't really know what's going on with this video. Come on, baby. And you can see that thing pop up again in the frame there, and then it kind of comes down to his side, and then he jumps down, and it's there. You could see it moving around a little bit. You could see it at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then he throws it at his side again. I know there was a lot of talk that there wasn't a weapon up there, so it couldn't have been him. This is grainy, crappy footage, right?
It's footage, yeah.
It's all we got to work with. And I, to me, maybe you disagree, that pretty much dispels that entire theory that there was nothing on top of that roof with him.
Look, it certainly seems like he does have something. I mean, look, we don't have clear video evidence that it definitely is a weapon. I think what was confusing at first was that there were reports that he broke it down afterwards, and then later on it's found assembled in the woods, wrapped in a towel. And so why would you go through the trouble of disassembling it, then reassembling it and stashing it? That doesn't make sense. But I think where we are today, it's kind of been disproven that he did not break it down while he was on the roof.
Pretty well disproven too. And I think just early on, there's a lot of videos too that he was walking through, and you can kind of see a little bit here that there's obviously something in his pants in some of these videos. This is, again, just a quick still image right there. And you can see where they're walking through on the bottom pictures here, but there's obviously something there. That's not the video per se, but there's a lot of that stuff. And I think that it's plausible that getting there, he hid this thing in his pants, and maybe getting out of there, he wasn't shoving it back down his pants, but he was maybe trying to hold it at his side with that towel. Maybe, I mean, it looked like a pair of jeans to me, but maybe he just kind of shoves it back down. He's got a loose waist, and he's kind of trying to bury it back down there to get out of there. I don't know. But by the time we see him running, it seems like that might have changed. But
I don't know. The only, and I get it, right? There's clearly something there. What I struggle with is the fact that I am a gun owner and I do own a rifle, and the rifle that I own is much smaller and less powerful than a 30-06, right? It's a 22 LR. I couldn't fit that in a single pair of pants that I own. Not one. There's no way. There's just zero chance. It's not fitting. It's not going to happen.
What if it's broken down though? Like that's where I think the differentiation. I think the breakdown is on the way there.
It, maybe right. If I field strip the thing and I just literally, I've got the butt of the gun here and I've got, maybe I've got the barrel up sleeve or something like that. Maybe I can go through great lengths to hide it. But as it currently sits, fully assembled, there's no way. It's just, it isn't happening. And again, that's just me grappling with what I'm seeing versus what I know to be my own reality, and I know that I can do it with what I own. So, I do find that a little odd.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think on the way there, I think it's very plausible that it's wrapped up. I mean, it's broken down. You get there, you unwrap this thing, and then you ditch it as soon as you can. As soon as whatever happens, you ditch it in the woods right away, and you just get the hell out of there. Like that to me doesn't sound that out of the realm of possibility. It actually sounds like the most plausible one, and why I wouldn't even think anything else outside of that.
No, in terms of a plan, I don't disagree with you at all. Like, that's what, if you were going to go commit that act, that's what you would do. So,
Right.
no, I don't disagree with you as far as that's concerned.
The other aspect that really has been kind of plaguing social media is the idea that there's some ulterior motive here. There's something else, somebody else behind it. And that's the one I've struggled with the most, because my question would be, well, why? What would they gain from putting a hit out on Charlie Kirk?
Yeah. So,
tread carefully.
I've kind of flip-flopped back and forth a lot about this one. As I said earlier, the day it happened, I was, not immediately, but that night I was totally on, hey, there has to be a larger force at hand, and then I kind of drew back. But then I read some things, and I watched some things, and I want to be very clear, right? There is absolutely zero evidence that supports this narrative at all in the slightest bit. There's no evidence that there was an additional shooter. There's no evidence that there were more powerful people, or even potentially a more powerful or a powerful nation that did want him killed. There's no physical, hard proof evidence, but there are motives. And I have questions about those motives.
What are the motives?
I'm a big Tim Dillon fan. Love Tim Dillon, one of my favorite comedians. I watch his show every Saturday. In fact, I couldn't wait for this Saturday because I wanted to hear his comments. I wanted to hear what he had to say on Charlie Kirk. Him and Dave Smith. Well, I couldn't wait for them to come out. And I think Dave Smith had the best take. In any event, I digress. Let's get back to the podcast. Tim Dillon had on, and it was a very unique episode. It's usually him solo, he's ranting and raving, and I love it because I get to learn things. I'm informed about the geopolitical sphere, but I get to laugh the entire time, right? So that's why I love the Tim Dillon show. And this was certainly a much more somber episode, but he did have a guest on, which he doesn't often do. So he had, let me make sure I get his name correctly, Max Blumenthal, who's a journalist and an editor at the Gray Zone. I'm not familiar with Max, I'm not familiar with the Gray Zone, that publication. But he did have Max Blumenthal on, who did write an article. I think it's simply just titled Charlie Kirk. And he raises some really good questions about an ulterior motive. An ulterior motive of a nation in the Middle East, we'll call it. I'm gonna leave it at that. And what I'm gonna do for you, I have some bullet points here that I just kind of, because I know you haven't read that article, you haven't watched that episode, right? So everything that I'm about to tell you is going to be new to you. So I'm gonna give you some brief bullet points here, and then we can kind of talk about it afterwards, right? So in a nutshell, right, what Max Blumenthal's article is about, and what he talked about on the Tim Dillon podcast, he'd actually followed Charlie for the past 10 years very closely. What I got from this episode and from this interview, politically, they were polar opposites. I could be wrong on that, but that's the gist that I got from it. But he followed Charlie and followed Turning Point USA for the past 10 years. And again, this is Max's perspective, not mine. Over time, Charlie began to face pressure from his base. So within his youth conservative base, and it's funny. Somebody in our circle said, why would you take out Charlie Kirk? He's nowhere near the levels of Tucker or nowhere near the levels of some of the other conservative voices, like a Ben Shapiro or something like that. But Charlie Kirk was the quintessential largest voice in the youth conservative movement in America by far. I mean, he had millions and millions of followers. I'd say probably about 4 or 5 years ago at this point, there's this grassroots movement within his youth conservative group called the Groypers. And the Groypers are, I guess the best way to describe them, they're kind of like a white nationalist, very far-right extremist group, right? But what they start to do is they start to put pressure on Charlie and ask very uncomfortable questions about the United States and our relationship with this other nation in the Middle East. Now, mind you, I actually kind of need to backtrack a little bit here. It's alleged by Max that Turning Point USA, which we know is Charlie's company, was founded by certain folks that are either directly tied to or sympathizers of this Middle Eastern nation. Okay, so Charlie has a reason to, and by the way, I don't know if that's true. This is all what Max has to say. So Charlie has a reason to be pro that nation. I almost said it. Caught myself there. And so he's facing.
We're treading
some
carefully
now.
here, folks, because we don't want to get
We're-
more flags and bans.
We're trying to tread as carefully as we possibly can. I'm gonna up and say something at some point, but I'm really gonna try my hardest not to. So Charlie's got Turning Point USA. It's funded by these folks that are supporters and allies of a foreign nation in the Middle East. He starts to face some backlash and some pressure from his own base in this grassroots movement called the Groypers that come up at his own base. After a day in October, we'll call it, because I don't even want to say that. There was a day in October. Remember, it happened about 2-3 years ago? Yeah. Well, after that, he really started to face a lot of pressure because the general consensus amongst most young Americans, whether you're on the right or the left, is they're kind of now against this nation in the Middle East, right? That's always been a very strong ally of the United States. So he's facing a lot of pressure here. Granted, I don't know what he personally felt about that situation, but he's certainly facing pressure and he's getting a lot of questions about it. Back in, I want to say July, Charlie actually hosted an event. I want to say it was in Florida. I could be wrong on that, where he allowed and also participated, but he allowed other voices that are very critical of that Middle Eastern nation at his event. And it's alleged that, and these are very well-known people, right? Tucker Carlson was one of them. Dave Smith was one of them, right? People who are not for this nation in the Middle East. And so, now, mind you, he's being funded and backed by people that are sympathetic to this Middle Eastern nation. And now, it's almost like he's turning, and he is either
keep breaking
being
up on me
critical.
there, bud.
How about now?
No, I hear you. You just keep cutting in and out there for me for a little bit. Like your camera's frozen, so I may be losing your
How about
point
now?
there. No, I see you
We good?
moving around. Yeah.
All
yeah.
right, good. All right, good. So,
Why'd you freeze? Tim?
you got me?
Yeah.
Dude, I lost you for a second there. right.
That's all you, baby. All right.
Well, I know, I'm saying I lost you.
He begins getting critical, and then
So he begins getting critical, and then he starts getting text messages and phone calls. Text messages and phone calls from the Prime Minister of this foreign nation. And it's an offer. It's an offer to bring Turning Point USA to great heights that Charlie had never even imagined, excuse me. But the catch is, you gotta be sympathetic to our cause, right? That's gotta be always looming over your head. They're kind of gotta be the puppet masters and control everything, right? So Charlie turns it down. And some of Max's sources that were not only close to Charlie, but he also claims to have sources that are very high up in the Trump administration. I don't even know if I should have said the T name. Mentioned that Charlie, I forget at this point, who cares? Actually feared for his life, right? He wasn't just afraid of financial, implications or, his reputation or being shunned or being outcast. He actually did fear for his life, right? So, that's kind of the in a nutshell, that's the Max Blumenthal article. Again, there is absolutely no evidence that this foreign Middle Eastern nation were the ones backing the silencing of him. But it's certainly a narrative, at least in my opinion, that kind of makes sense.
Well, a couple things in that. We've certainly talked on this show before about, and I think I gave a very personal example without naming names, about how there are media companies out there, or call them what they are, propaganda companies out there, that will basically come in and they'll find people of influence and they'll dump just bucket loads of money in front of them and say, hey, you're basically just going to give us your face and your brand and you're going to read what we tell you to read. And I've seen it in many industries, in technology. Finance is a big one. And you're seeing these people basically sell their souls towards
Well, they just
the end of their careers, take cash out, and then they don't care. And they'll disappear in a couple of years. They'll ride off in the sunset. All their credibility really means nothing to them at that point because they get to retire early and that's all they care about. So there's precedent for that. Do I think that Charlie was a big enough advocate against or opponent against said country to not be named because we don't want to get a ban on YouTube to land us here? Me personally, I don't think so. I'm not going to say it's out of
That's
the realm
where
of
we
possibility. Well, right. And I think there is a lot of conspiracies that sort of tie into, countries doing this type of stuff, not just this particular country. Our country has done it before. Russia's done it before. There's plenty of other countries that have done it before. One of the things that I had said, and I was going to kind of save this for the end, but I think it's worthwhile to bring up now because it really makes sense. Hey, Bob, I see you in the chat there. One of the things that I had said is that it might have been me that talked about the Charlie Kirk not being big enough, and I don't think he was. When you look at Charlie Kirk, the average person knew him because they saw him on social media clip, and he's no different than the millennials seeing like a Daniel Mack up there asking people what they're driving, or the other Daniel Mack that's rapping a song, freestyling a song because he asked like for 5 words from the crowd, or the School of Hard Knocks kid that's asked what you do for a living. It's all clips you see on YouTube, and these guys kind of become these like social media influencers. But when you look at the scheme of things, right? Like, what would putting a hit out on him do when there are bigger players that have way more money, that have way more influence, that have way more power than somebody like him?
because
And
those
I know
people
what
are
you're going
old.
to, but there's a difference, right? I don't think that really matters as much because the people that get involved in politics, that steer the direction of the country, are those people. One of the biggest fears I had when Elon got involved in this arena was just this. He's not used to that kind of press, right? And which is why I think he kind of folded back for a little while. And that was my biggest concern, especially after the things that have happened to the president there. Was what's going to happen if, like, he's flagrant and just out there, right? He's going to just walk out and do whatever he wants to do. He's not really going to think about that. But this is also a guy that I respect him. I look up to this guy. I mean, this guy is changing in my opinion, is changing the world with a lot of what he does. I'm concerned at something like that because taking him down impacts a lot. Number one, it impacts major donor funding. It impacts a lot of technology influence. It impacts a lot of government contracts. It impacts a lot. What you lose, or before I even get to that, with Charlie too, he wasn't even the most divisive guy. And that's
No,
when
not at all.
I might have been the one that said like a Ben Shapiro, right? A lot of people don't like Ben Shapiro because of the way he comes off. He seems a lot more smug. Matt Walsh, who you and I have said numerous times, I don't agree with like 90% of what Matt Walsh stands for. I have a really big problem with it. There are some things that I think he says and does good. The What is a Woman documentary was very fascinating. I commend him for putting that together. But when I sit down and watch an interview with him, like, I'm more disgusted with the guy. I have less in common with him.
I thought he was
outside of that.
terrible on Rogan. Terrible on Rogan.
Yeah, awful. He doesn't strike me as a good human being, and that's unfortunate because those are big voices. So you've got a guy that doesn't have the money as like an Elon, doesn't have the influence as some of these major politicians that can control things, doesn't have the power as some of these global elitists, doesn't have the divisiveness of some of these other influencers in that space. Even Candace Owens has become very divisive in the things she says and the things she criticizes. Alex Jones is another big one. Like, these are people that I'm not saying I understand, but like, it makes more sense to me why somebody would target them. When you go after somebody like Charlie, if it's planned, right? We knew this guy Tyler planned it, but I'm saying if it's targeted from an organization, a group, a government, all you're taking away is freedom of speech. And maybe that's the intent. But what you are doing is you're challenging that. You are telling people now that if they stood up and stand up and do it the right way, you risk your life doing that. And that is an impactful message to me, which I don't think was the anticipated end game, right? Like, I don't think they expected that result. I think that is what has become of that. I think people have now, I mean, you're seeing it from a Hollywood standpoint. I've never seen so many celebrities, sports athletes stand up and speak up on behalf of a conservative cause at all, particularly something like this. And you're seeing a lot of people do that. Shout out to,
which is great,
our New York Giants, multiple players from Elite Neighbors, Cam Scadaboo, Jackson Dart, multiple players coming up and saying something. Probably the only good thing they've done this season thus far, but that's a story for another day.
An interesting game on Sunday, but you know.
Yeah. But like that's the issue for me, and that's my takeaway. So when I look at what a foreign nation, what would they have to gain by this? There's no real pro to it, right? Like, you're not gaining enough.
Oh, I'm gonna tell you.
Okay, so tell me.
Oh, I'm gonna tell you. So this is where you and I differ on this, right? So that specific nation, okay, has been doing this for a long time. Okay. You mentioned the word propaganda earlier.
Speculatively, yes.
Speculatively has been doing this for a long time. The propaganda machine is the legacy media. It's the CBSs, it's the MSNBCs, it's the CNNs,
okay.
It's even the Fox Newses, okay? Who I tend to agree with more. It's still a propaganda machine. They don't have control over that anymore because it's dead. It's dead. The only people watching those programs and paying attention to the legacy media and reading the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal are the boomers, are the older people that are dying off. Amongst, and I'm talking about even people younger than us, right? I mean, like, my kids are growing up on social media, right? And thank God for Elon, because we do have the most major social, one of the most major social media platforms in the world that is an advocate of free speech. But because of that, they've lost their propaganda machine. They can't feed you the and the lies that they want to because it doesn't exist anymore because no one's watching it. And what was so special about Charlie's movement, and who did he really click with? It was the youth. I mentioned it earlier. He was the biggest, most quintessential name in the youth conservative movement. And so if you look at it from that angle, you look at it from that perspective, all right? I mean, what went on all over the country, right? Just prior to, and it's still going on today, right? I was going to say prior to the election, is protest, right? From the river to the sea, from the river to the sea. So the youth of America is not aligning with the values of that Middle Eastern nation anymore. If they've lost it, it's gone. So that in and of itself is a reason to take out a dissenting voice, and not only just a dissenting voice, but the largest dissenting voice in that youth movement. So from my perspective, that's as good a reason as any. Because what's going to happen when these... And you know, look, we could bring this back to just, you know, far left politics, right? Not that I don't want to... Not that we're going to dig deep into that, right? But the common narrative is what, right? Where do people become indoctrinated with this? In college, in schools, on college campuses. Where was Charlie doing all of his talks? On college campuses. He was speaking directly to the people that were being indoctrinated. He was undoing it. There was a huge movement. So for me, I mean, that's as good a reason as any to take him out.
Why not go after Joe Rogan? Why not go after some of the liberal ones that are adamantly opposed to said nation actively? Why not target any of them? That's my point, is why target somebody that is more recently speaking out versus the ones that have spoken out or that have a bigger reach than others? And that's the disconnect for me, is it just doesn't add up. I think it's cut and dry, honestly. And honestly, I saw another funny one here. I'm going to pull up for you a second. I think there's motives in other places that are way more aligned like if you look at like the trans culture in general, I think makes a lot more sense that somebody from that culture that is already walking on the edge is going to lose their mind because
agree with
that's
you
the only
a
thing that
million
was being
percent.
condemned.
I agree with you 1,000,000%.
Really quick one, a funny one that I saw come up here. I'm not subscribing to this, but I thought it was an interesting one. Utah Governor Spencer Cox should be expelled from the Republican Party. Charlie was notoriously bashing him. And of course, this is the governor who is then presiding over the manhunt for him here. And so there's, obviously the conspiracies have popped up that he was involved, and there's new ones that are popping up now all of a sudden as I opened it up today. I might even still have the click here of all these like secret weapons that people were using. Let me pull a couple of them up here. I got another good one for you, Mr. Phillips. You're going to like this one. This is where like my concern about starting to look outside the box too much. This is why it starts to get wild and overthink it. People, there's a video of this, but I assure you that you're not going to be able to see what's in the video. People are saying that this guy has got basically a little firearm in his sleeve right here, and that this is what it is. And he was able to shoot this little rimfire shot directly at him. Is it possible? Sure. This is one of his security guards. There was talks about the guy with the hat, who, I mean, come on, guys. Like, listen, as a guy that sweats quite a bit, if I'm standing outside in blistering heat under the sun and I'm wearing a hat, I'll probably fix my hat. I'll probably touch my nose, wipe the sweat. I've done it 100 times during this podcast. I'll wipe my nose off.
I was going to say, I wear a hat most podcasts that I'm around with it constantly.
Right,
so
I'm
not
always touching
buying
my
that
face
whole
and doing
thing.
something like that. Right.
Yeah.
The guy behind him who just kind of went like this and grabbed himself, like, yeah, he's standing there like this for an hour. He probably stretched his arm out, grabbed his shoulder. He's like, nah, I'm supposed to stand like this. I'm going to get in trouble. Like, I think to suggest that, and this is the problem, again, I'm bring it back to, is like when we start to think too far out of the bubble, right? Then you start seeing these little things come in and sour the whole narrative to get all together. My concern with that becomes there's so much noise that gets plagued that the actual real resolution is never found, because people like Kash Patel feel like, well, I gave the answer now. You guys are going off on a tangent. You don't trust me anyway. And they're just going to shut down and not tell us anything. I don't know, man. It just seems, in a lot of other situations, I would think there's a deeper conspiracy here. In this one specifically, I think it's cut and dry. I think it's a kid that got pissed off. He got radicalized by the people that are around him. Yeah, here we go. There's a guy in the chat here on YouTube also said the same thing. USA Patriot. What we were just actually talking about. The guy in the hidden one right there. There's another one on the opposite side. There was my favorite ones of all, Mr. Phillips, where Charlie wears a boom mic on his shirt, and I have one around here somewhere. We don't wear them for these recordings anymore. But like it's here and it's pinned up, and then his shirt's there, and then like they slow down the video, like, well, the F disappears and this thing goes flying, and it's the guy behind him that's going like this, and he's pulling this packet of blood because it goes all the way up here. He got hit. He jumped. The impact shook him. The boom mic flies off. His shirt bent, and you're looking at a zoomed in video on social media where it just cuts out. It's not AI, guys. It's not fake. There's plenty of people there.
No,
it was live stream. Like,
ridiculous.
as a person that uses AI regularly, I can assure you that it's not that easy to get all these things right. It's not. There are artifacts in film. And in fact, the easiest way to tell an AI film is there aren't mistakes like that. You don't see the same film artifacts. It's too smooth. So just file that away sometimes. Yeah, USA Patriot. We all know the evil ideology who in the comment, oh, who did this? So maybe leaning into yours a little bit there. I don't know. I don't know that we're ever going to get an answer like anything else. And even if we have the answer, I don't know that it's enough for the internet as a whole to really grasp on to. It's enough for me. I don't know if it's enough for you. I'm inclined to think it's not, but
no,
it's what we got.
Like I said, dude, I'm way more aligned with you. Look, I think that there is a 99.9% chance that we got the guy, that he was a lunatic. We're definitely getting dinged on this one. That he was a complete far-left lunatic who vehemently disagreed and had an obsession and decided to go and commit a heinous act. I think that there's a 99.9% chance. I just thought that it was really interesting that there was another theory that, from my perspective, at least held water as to why someone or a group of people would have a motive to do this. And actually, I do want to go back because this is kind of when the recording was getting a little up. Maybe it was the nation coming in. The prime minister of said nation, unprovoked, wasn't asked this question, came out and made public statements immediately denying that nation's involvement. Like, to me, why would you do that?
That is a little weird. Yeah.
Like, that's just so weird to me. And again, it's probably not the case. It's weird, though. You
Dude,
gotta admit that's weird.
I have to mute every time you say every time. Every time. Otherwise, we're getting flagged. We're going to get 2,000 more limited tags. Every time. Mauricio, get that mute button ready. And now you froze. Oh, there you are. He's frozen, unfroze there. That is a little weird, admittedly. I'm not going to look too much into it. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know if you're still there, or if you're frozen solid
here,
again
buddy.
for me. So
I'm here.
There you go. So now he moves. Listen, we appreciate. We had a huge turnout in the live stream on X and YouTube. People have been dropping in and dropping back out. We're going to post this up on Thursday in its entirety if you missed it. So please do come back and check it out. YouTube.com/@conspiracyrealist, or head over to conspiracyrealist.com. Get access to all of your places where you can subscribe. Just scroll right to the bottom. You can see where we are hosted on. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're on X, Instagram, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, what's the other one? Podbean, each and every one of them out there. We appreciate all of your support. Like, subscribe, follow, leave a comment on Spotify too if you're on there. That's kind of the easiest way to do it there. We try to respond to each and every one of them. We have a pretty good track record of doing that, as long as you're not a dick. Mr. Phillips, cups are empty. Another good episode of Cocktails and Conspiracies. Raise your glass to mysteries, everyone. Cocktails and Conspiracies. Until next time. Is your website still stuck in 2009, or worse, built by your cousin's friend who kind of knows WordPress?
No! God, please, no!
It's time for an upgrade. At SFX.com, we specialize in custom web design, SEO, and full-service IT solutions tailored for small businesses that are ready to scale. Whether you're just starting out or reinventing your brand, the team at SFX.com brings strategy, style, and serious tech skills to every project. Visit s-fx.com today, where small businesses get big solutions.
Visit s-fx.com.